The Adventures of David Perkins. Like, subscribe, comment. Hello and welcome to the Adventures of David Perkins. This time I'm walking around Hilltop House in England, the workspace of Beatrix Potter. Helen Beatrix Potter was born on the 28th of July 1866 in London, England, and would amongst other things become most celebrated for a series of children's books, beginning in 1902 with The Tale of Peter Rabbit. As a child, Beatrix kept a variety of small pets, such as mice, rabbit, hedgehog and bats, along with collections of butterflies and other insects, which she drew and studied. Beatrix was devoted to the care of her small animals, and was particularly fond of her dog Spot. Until the age of 15, Beatrix spent summer holidays at Dalgwys, an estate on the River Tay in Perthshire, Scotland. It was here Beatrix's skill as an artist and observer of the natural world was born. In 1887, the Potter family took their first summer holiday to the Lake District in England. It was here that Beatrix would meet Hardwicke Rawlinson, the Vicar of Wray and later the founding secretary of the National Trust. When Beatrix was on vacation, she would often write to children of her former governess, Annie Moore. In September 1893, one of Moore's children, Noel, was unwell, so to cheer him up, Beatrix wrote him a story about 4 little rabbits whose names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail and Peter. 7 years would pass before Beatrix revisited these rabbits. In 1890, the 24-year-old Beatrix's skill as an artist was sufficient that the publishing firm of Hildesheimer and Faulkner bought several of her drawings of her real-life rabbit, Benjamin Bunny, to illustrate verses for Frederick Weatherly's book A Happy Pair. 3 years later, in 1893, the same printer bought several more drawings for Weatherly's Our Dear Relations. The following year, Potter sold a series of frog illustrations and verses for the popular annual Changing Pictures. Beatrix was pleased by this success and became determined to one day publish her own illustrated stories. During the 1890s, Beatrix's scientific interest centred on mycology. Curious as to how fungi reproduced, Beatrix began microscopic drawings of agaric fungal spores, and in 1895 developed a theory of their germination. Through the connections of her uncle, Sir Henry Enfield Roscoe, a chemist and vice-chancellor at the University of London, she consulted with botanists at Kew Gardens, convincing George Massey of her ability to germinate spores and her theory of hybridization. Beatrix did not believe in the theory of symbiosis, but rather proposed a more independent process of mycological reproduction. Beatrix wrote up her conclusions and submitted a paper on the germination of the spores of the agrocene to the Linnean Society in 1897. It was introduced by Massey because, as a female, Beatrix could not attend proceedings nor read her paper. Beatrix, however, subsequently withdrew her paper after realising that some of her samples had become contaminated, but nevertheless she continued her microscopic studies for several years, eventually passing her work to the Armitt Museum and Library in Ambleside, where mycologists still refer to them in identifying fungi. There is also a collection of her fungus paintings at the Perth Museum and Art Gallery in Perth, Scotland. It would take 100 years for the Linnean Society to issue a posthumous apology to Beatrix Potter for the sexism displayed in its handling of her now recognised mycological research. In 1900, Beatrix revisited her tale about the 4 little rabbits, but unable to find a buyer for the work, she published it for family and friends at her own expense in December of 1901. It was drawn in black and white with a coloured frontispiece. Hardwicke Rawlinson, now a canon, had great faith in Beatrix's tale and recast it in didactic verse for submission to publishers. Frederick Warne & Co. had previously rejected the tale, but with the rise in children's book market reconsidered and accepted the Bunny Book, as Warne & Co. referred to it. The firm declined Rawlinson's verse in favour of Potter's original prose, and asked Beatrix to colour her pen and ink illustrations, choosing the then new Henschel 3-coloured process for reproduction. And so, on the 2nd of October 1902, The Tale of Peter Rabbit was published, to immediate success. It was followed the next year by The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin and The Tale of Gloucester, which had also been written as a picture letter to Moore's children. Working with Norman Warne as her editor, Beatrix published 2 or 3 little books each year, 23 in all. In 1905, Beatrix became unofficially engaged to Norman Warne, but alas, the engagement lasted only 1 month until Warne died of pernicious anemia at the age of 37. That same year, Beatrix bought Hilltop Farm in the Lake District. Realising the farm's boundaries needed protecting, Beatrix sought advice from a local solicitor, W.H. Healis and Son, with William Healis, the son of W.H. Healis and Son, acting for her. Beatrix bought contiguous pasture and in 1909 Castle Farm across the road from Hilltop Farm. The village the farms are in is called Near Sawrey and would feature in her future books, such as Tom Kitten's Gate, in the tale of Tom Kitten, Towerbank Arms, in the tale of Jemima Puddleduck, The Old Post Office, in the tale of the Pie and the Patty Pan, Anvil Cottage, in the tale of Samuel Whiskers, and the Post Box in Peter Rabbit's Almanac. Owning and managing these working farms required routine collaboration with William Healis, and in the summer of 1912, Healis had proposed marriage to Beatrix. They were married on the 15th of October 1913 and resided at Castle Farm. Hilltop remained a working farm, but was now remodelled to allow for the tenant family and Beatrix's private studio and workshop. Soon after acquiring Hilltop Farm, Potter became keenly interested in the breeding and raising of Herdwick sheep, the indigenous sheep of the Lakeland fells. In 1923, Beatrix bought a large sheep farm in the Troutbeck Valley called Troutbeck Park Farm, formerly a deer park, and she restored its land with thousands of Herdwick sheep. This established her as one of the major Herdwick sheep farmers in the county. She was admired by her shepherds and farm managers for her willingness to experiment with the latest biological remedies for the common diseases of sheep. Potter was also a prize-winning breeder of Herdwick sheep, keenly interested in land preservation. By the late 1920s, Potter and her Hilltop farm manager, Tom Story, had made a name for themselves and took many prizes at local agricultural shows. Beatrix Potter died of pneumonia and heart disease on the 22nd of December 1943 at the age of 77. In her will, she left nearly all her property to the National Trust, including 16 kilometres square of land, 16 farms, various cottages, herds of cattle and a great many Herdwick sheep. Potter is credited with preserving much of the land that now constitutes the Lake District National Park. And to this day, the tale of Mrs. Tiggywinkle is still my favourite. Next time I shall be walking around Furness Abbey in England. The Adventures of David Perkins. Like, subscribe, comment.